The rain that night was a slow, deliberate drum against the skylight of the loft we shared in the old brick warehouse on 14th and Mercer. It wasn't the kind of storm that rattled windows. It was quieter, almost polite, like it was apologizing for intruding on the city. I came in around 10, soaked through from the walk back from the print shop where I'd been pulling proofs for a client who kept changing his mind about the color of a logo. My boots left dark prints on the concrete floor. The air smelled of turpentine, coffee, the faint cedar note of Ilias's soap. I knew he was home. His bike was chained to the railing outside, dripping like everything else. The living room was lit only by the green banker's lamp on the drafting table we both used. Elias sat hunched over it, shoulders curved inward, one hand moving in small, rhythmic circles beneath the lip of the table. The sound was soft, almost swallowed by the rain, but unmistakable. The hush of skin on skin, the catch of breath held too long. I should have backed out. Instead, I stood in the doorway, coat still dripping, and watched the way the lamplight caught the fine hairs at the nape of his neck. He hadn't noticed me, not yet. His eyes were closed, lashes dark against his cheeks, mouth slightly open. There was something unbearably private about it, like catching someone mid-prayer. The floor creaked. His head snapped up. The pencil in his other hand clattered to the table. For a second, we just stared me in the doorway, him half hidden behind the table's shadow. Then he yanked his hand free, cheeks flooding crimson, and pulled the oversized sweater he'd been wearing down over his lap like a shield. Shitniko, I thought his voice cracked on my name. I thought you were at the shop till midnight. I finished early. My own voice sounded foreign to calm. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, it's fine. He wouldn't look at me. Just go, please. But I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way his shoulders curled in, like he was trying to fold himself smaller. Maybe it was the tremor in his fingers as he gripped the edge of the table. I took one step, then another, until I was close enough to see the faint freckles across his nose that only showed up when he'd been in the sun too long. Elias. I kept my voice low. You don't have to hide, he laughed, a short, broken sound. I'm not hiding. I'm mortified. I've seen you cry over a rejected grant proposal. I've seen you eat cold ramen at 3am because you forgot dinner existed. This I gestured vaguely toward the table. This is just Tuesday. His eyes flicked up to mine, wary. It's not just Tuesday. No, I agreed. It's not. The rain picked up, a sudden gust rattling the skylight. Elias shivered. I don't know what possessed me may be the same. Reckless impulse that made me take on clients who paid in exposure, but I reached out and brushed a raindrop from his wrist. His skin was fever-warm. Do you want me to leave? I asked. He swallowed. I don't know what I want. That's okay. I sat on the edge of the drafting table, careful not to crowd him. We can figure it out together. He stared at my hand, still resting lightly on his wrist. Then, slowly, he turned his palm up. An invitation. I threaded our fingers together. His grip was surprisingly strong. He stopped, started again. I've never let anyone see me like this. Not since I was 16 and my mom walked in on me with a magazine under my mattress. I huffed a soft laugh. My dad caught me with his PlayStation controller once. Different kind of magazine, that earned me a tiny smile. You're an idiot. Yeah, but I'm your idiot. The words hung between us heavier than they should have been. Ilias's breath hitched. He leaned forward, just enough that our knees touched. Nico, I'm here. He closed his eyes. I don't know how to ask for what I need. You don't have to know. I shifted closer until I could feel the heat radiating off him. Just tell me when to stop. He didn't tell me to stop. It started slow, my hand sliding up his arm, tracing the line of his shoulder beneath the sweater. He trembled when I brushed the hollow of his throat. When I cupped his jaw, he leaned into it like he'd been starving for touch. His mouth found mine, hesitant at first, then desperate. We tasted like rain and coffee and something sharper fear maybe, or relief. I pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Still okay? He nodded, frantic. Don't stop. We moved to the couch, a sagging leather thing we'd rescued from a curb in Brooklyn. The cushions sighed under our weight. Elias straddled my lap, sweater rucked up to reveal the pale line of his stomach. I traced it with my thumb, watching goosebumps rise in my wake. When I dipped lower, he gasped into my mouth. "Tell me," I murmured against his lips. "Touch me, please." I did. Slowly, carefully learning the shape of him through the thin fabric of his sweatpants. He was already hard, straining against my palm. When I slipped my hand beneath the waistband, he buried his face in my neck, muffling a broken sound. "Nico, I've got you." It wasn't graceful. There were elbows and awkward angles and the persistent drip of rain from my hair onto his chest. But it was honest. When he came, it was with my name on his lips and his fingers digging into my shoulders hard enough to bruise. I held him through it, stroking his back until the shudders subsided. Afterward, we stayed tangled on the couch, the blanket from the back draped over us. Ilias's head rested on my chest, his breath warm against my skin. The rain had softened to a whisper. "I've wanted this for months," he said quietly. "Since you fell asleep on my shoulder during that Goddard marathon and drooled on my shirt." I laughed, the sound rumbling through both of us. "Romantic, you snore too. Asshole." He tilted his head up to look at me. "I'm serious, Nico. I didn't know how to say it. I thought after everything with my family, the way they look at me like I'm a disappointment waiting to happen, I thought maybe I didn't get to want things you get to want," I said fiercely. "You get to have—" He kissed me then, soft and slow, like he was memorizing the shape of it. When we pulled apart, his eyes were bright. "Stay tonight?" God. "Try and make me leave." We didn't sleep much. There was too much to explore, fingers tracing collarbones, mouths mapping the curve of hips, whispered confessions in the dark. By the time the sky outside turned the color of wet concrete, we were wrapped around each other like we'd been doing this for years. The next morning, Elias made coffee while I sketched him from the kitchen table, hair a mess. Wearing nothing but my t-shirt and a pair of my boxers that hung low on his hips, he kept glancing over, cheeks pink every time he caught me looking. "Stop objectifying me," he teased, sliding a mug across the table. "Never." I caught his wrist and tugged him into my lap. "You're my favorite subject." He rolled his eyes, but he was smiling. Sap. Over the following weeks, the loft changed. The drafting table became a shared space again. But now, there were coffee rings and charcoal smudges and the occasional handprint in unexpected places. Elias started leaving his sketchbooks open, pages filled with studies of my hands, my mouth, the slope of my back when I bent over the sink. I left him notes in the margins, little doodles of us tangled together, captions like "property of Nico and mine." After a particularly brutal critique at his program, he came home shaking with frustration. I found him in the shower, water scalding, shoulders hunched. Without a word, I stripped and joined him. He didn't speak until I'd washed his hair, fingers gentle against his scalp. They said my work was technically proficient, but emotionally vacant. He muttered, "Fuck them." I turned him to face me, water streaming down both our faces. "Your work makes me feel things I don't have names for." "That's not vacant." He searched my eyes. "You really think so?" "I know so." I kissed him under the spray, slow and deep, until the tension melted from his body. We didn't make it out of the shower for a long time. Winter came early that year. The radiator clanked and hissed, and we took to sharing the big bed in my room because it was closer to the heat. Elias liked to read aloud, art theory mostly, but sometimes poetry. I'd sketch while he talked, capturing the way his mouth shaped certain words, the way his hands moved when he got excited about negative space. One evening, snow piling against the skylight, he set his book aside and crawled into my lap. I got into the residency in Marseille. My heart stuttered. "That's Elias. That's incredible. It's 6 months." He traced the line of my jaw. "I don't want to go if it means losing this." "You won't." I caught his hand, pressed a kiss to his palm. "We'll figure it out. Video calls, care packages, me visiting when I can swing it. I'm not going anywhere." He studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled, small and real. "You're really okay with long distance?" "I'm okay with anything that keeps you in my life." I kissed him, tasting snow and coffee and the faint salt of tears he hadn't let fall. Besides, think of the reunion sex. He laughed, the sound bright against the quiet. Pervert. You're pervert. Later, tangled in sheets that smelled of us, he whispered, I love you, you know. I pressed my face into his neck. Took you long enough. He pinched my side. Say it back, asshole. I love you, I said, and meant it more than I'd ever meant anything. Always. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and relentless, covering the city in a hush. Inside, we built something warmer space, where desire and tenderness lived side by side, where vulnerability wasn't a weakness but a kind of strength. The loft on 14th and Mercer wasn't just a place to crash anymore. It was home. And Elias Quiet, brilliant, brave Elias, was the best thing I'd ever drawn. Just a place to crash anymore. It was home. Elias Quiet, brilliant, brave Elias was the best thing I'd ever drawn into my life. We never kissed that night. The air between us was too charged, too fragile, like a single wrong breath might shatter it. Instead, we sat on the edge of the old wooden dock, our fingers intertwined, shoulders brushing under the weight of the summer stars. Elias had just confessed haltingly, his voice cracking like dry earth underfoot, that he'd felt this pull toward me for months, maybe years. I felt it too, a current running deep beneath the surface of our friendship. But inside, doubt gnawed at me. Had I imagined the depth in his eyes? Was he just saying what he thought would keep our fragile peace intact? Guilt twisted in my gut hiss for appending everything, mine for wanting more than he might be ready to give. And shame, that old shadow, hovering over the life we'd built together in this creaky lakeside cabin we called home. Hope flickered anyway. Stubborn and bright. Elias wrestled with his own storms. Raised in a strict religious household, where emotions were locked away like forbidden texts. He'd never voiced these feelings to a soul not his parents, not his siblings. Certainly not himself until the words tumbled out under the moonlight. Rejection loomed large in his mind, from family who might disown him, from friends who'd turn away in confusion or disgust. He questioned if this attraction was a flaw, something to bury deep and pray away. Yet beneath the fear pulsed a raw longing for skin against skin. For a hand that wouldn't flinch, for acceptance that didn't come with conditions. Between us, the nights hummed with electricity. Unspoken words crackling like fireflies in the dark. Silence became our language. I'd lie awake in my room, the thin walls doing little to muffle the world. Elias's breathing drifted down the hall, steady at first, then uneven, punctuated by what I swore were muffled sobs. My heart ached to cross the threshold, to wrap him in my arms and whisper that it was okay. But fear held me back. What if my comfort felt like pressure, pushing him further into retreat? So I waited, ears straining in the quiet. One sleepless night, insomnia clawing at me, I grabbed my journal from the nightstand and poured it all onto the pages. Two silhouettes on a misty shore, hands extended but inches apart, waves lapping at their feet. I tore the sketch out at dawn and pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a compass, anonymous, but laced with intent. I hoped he'd see himself in it, see us. That afternoon, I found him there, transfixed. He stood with a mug of coffee gone cold in his hand, his finger tracing the jagged line where pencil met paper. You drew this? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my throat constricting. It's us, I think. Or the space we're navigating. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. It's beautiful, he murmured. Terrifying, but beautiful. It wasn't much, but it felt like a bridge. Fragile as the paper it was drawn on, the weeks that followed. Blurred into a tapestry of tentative steps and sudden withdrawals. Summer bled into autumn. The lake's edge turning crisp with fallen maple leaves that piled against the cabin windows like unspoken apologies. Rain pattered more frequently on the tin roof, a soothing rhythm that masked the tension inside. We lit fires in the hearth, shared woolen blankets on the worn couch, the warmth of the flames mirroring the slow thaw between us. Candlelight danced across the walls, casting shadows that made our proximity feel both intimate and infinite. I yearned to close the distance, to let my hand linger on his knee during those quiet evenings. But Elias, ever cautious, would tense. Then shift away with a soft excuse, a need for more wood, a sudden thirst. Nights were the hardest. I'd murmur his name from the doorway, hoping for an invitation that rarely came. He'd smile faintly, mumble good night, and retreat to his room, the door clicking shut like a period at the end of a sentence. I understood the cadence of his fear. It had its own heartbeat. One day at the community college where we both took classes, he was a ghost text unanswered, glances averted in the hallway. "Everything all right?" I asked during a shared break, my voice casual, despite the knot in my chest. "Just swamped," he replied, eyes fixed on his notebook. Worry bloomed anyway. Had the confession been a mistake? Was he pulling back to spare us both the fallout? That evening, I channeled the anxiety into the kitchen. The scent of rosemary and thyme filled the air as I roasted chicken with root vegetables, something hearty to ground us. I set the table for 2 mismatched plates, flickering tea lights, and called up the stairs. Elias descended slowly, his expression a mask I couldn't read. "Dinner's on," I said, forcing lightness. He approached, but halted midway, hands fidgeting at his sides. "Noah," he said, my name hanging heavy. "We have to talk." My stomach plummeted. "Shoot," I managed, gripping the counter for support. He stared at the floorboards, scuffing one with his shoe. "I care about EMO than I've ever cared about anyone, but I'm not sure I'm ready for all of it." His voice cracked. "I'm terrified. Terrified that if I dive in, I'll shatter. Or worse, I'll drag you down with me." Tears welled in his eyes, unbidden. "I'm scared too," I confessed, stepping closer, but not touching. "But we can go slow. As slow as you need. I want you in this with me." I extended my hand, palm up, an offering. He looked at it, then at me, and finally placed his fingers in mine, tentative, trembling. "I've never let anyone this close," he whispered. "Not like this. It's safer to lock it away, pretend the feelings aren't there. Keep everything surface level." He let out a hollow laugh, the sound brittle as autumn leaves. Fear had fortified him over the years, subtle wounds from a father who preached fire and brimstone, a best friend from high school who'd ghosted him after a drunken admission slipped out. Those scars ran deep, even if he claimed they'd healed. I listened without interrupting, my thumb tracing circles on his knuckles. Then, gently, "What does all of it look like to you?" He exhaled shakily. "Vulnerability. Letting you see the parts I hide, the doubts, the desires. Touch without flinching. Wanting you without the shame that's been drilled into me. Loving freely, without bracing for the blow." My heart splintered and reformed in the same breath. I wanted to be that safe harbor, the one he could anchor in the days after. We orbited each other like planets in uneasy alignment, drawing near, then veering off. I respected his boundaries, sketching by the fire when he needed solitude, leaving trails of quiet affirmation. A note slipped under his door. "You're stronger than you know." Another on his pillow. "I'm not going anywhere." Some evenings, I'd find him on the porch, staring at the lake as dusk painted the water in bruised purples. I'd sit beside him, no words, just presence. One blustery afternoon, we carpooled back from a lecture on campus, the windshield wipers slashing through relentless rain. Elias shivered in the passenger seat, arms wrapped around himself. Without overthinking, I shrugged off my jacket and draped it over his shoulders. Our arms brushed. His breath hitched audibly. "This all right?" I asked, glancing over. He nodded, then, after a beat, leaned his head against my shoulder. It was tentative, a bird testing a perch, but it ignited something warm in my chest. Trust budding like the first crocuses under snow. Back at the cabin, paused in the narrow hallway, keys jingling in his hand. The overhead light cast a warm glow, highlighting the faint freckles across his nose. "I need you in my world," I said softly, echoing his earlier fears. "All of you, the messy, the real." He searched my face, pulse visible at his throat, a rapid flutter like trapped wings. Then, deliberately, he closed the space between us. His hand rose to cut my cheek, thumb brushing my jawline with feather-light caution. I met him halfway, our foreheads touching first. breaths mingling in the charged air. The kiss, when it came, was slow, a question asked and answered in the same moment. His lips were soft, hesitant, tasting of rain and unspoken promises. My hands found his waist, pulling him gently closer, but I let him set the pace. He deepened it briefly, a sigh escaping him, before pulling back with a shaky smile. That was okay, he murmured, eyes wide with wonder and a touch of fear. We stood there, wrapped in the quiet aftermath, the cabin creaking around us like an old friend approving. From there, the shifts were subtle but profound. Mornings brought shared coffee on the dock, fingers laced without second-guessing. Evenings evolved into tangled limbs under blankets. Conversations stretching into the wee hours about dreams deferred, families fractured, the beauty in our brokenness. Elia still had moments of retreat, walls rising like morning mist. But they'd dissipate faster now, dissolved by a touch or a knowing look. I sketched more, U.S. entwined in starlight, hands finally clasping across the divide. He hung them on the walls, a gallery of our becoming. Autumn deepened, leaves carpeting the path to the lake in fiery hues. One night as wind howled outside, Elias pulled me into his room without preamble. "I'm ready," he whispered against my neck, vulnerability raw in his voice. We moved slowly, exploring with reverence, kisses trailing like constellations, hands mapping uncharted skin. There were pauses for reassurance, laughter when nerves bubbled over, tears when old fears surfaced. But in the end, it was connection unfiltered, two souls bearing everything, finding home in the other's arms. Years later, we'd look back on that summer's end as the true beginning. The cabin stood witness to our growth from electric silences to effortless intimacy. Elias never fully shed his caution. It was part of him, a scar that added texture to his strength. But witness to our growth from electric silences to effortless intimacy. Elias never fully shed his caution. It was part of him, a scar that added texture to his strength. But he learned to lean into the longing, to let hope outweigh the shame. And I learned patience was its own kind of love. Under the same stars that had heard his confession, we built a life messy, real, unbreakable. I never meant to fall for my coworker. Elias worked the closing shift at the used bookstore with me. Always in the same faded cardigan, sleeves pushed to the elbows, ink smudges on his fingertips from shelving poetry. He had this way of tilting his head when a customer asked for something obscure, like he was listening to the books themselves. I noticed the small things first, the scar on his left thumb, the way he'd mouth the titles under his breath, the soft exhale when the last person left and the lights dimmed to amber. We weren't friends, not really. Just two people who locked up together, who sometimes lingered over the register counting quarters, who split the leftover pastries from the cafe next door. I told myself the flutter in my stomach was caffeine. I was wrong. It started the night the power went out during a thunderstorm. Rain hammered the roof like thrown gravel. The emergency lights kicked on, casting long shadows between the stacks. Elias was in the back, alphabetizing returns. I found him sitting on the floor, knees drawn up, a paperback open but unread in his lap. His shoulders shook. Not dramatic, just quiet, like he was trying to fold himself smaller. I crouched beside him. "Hey," he flinched. "I'm fine. You're not." He laughed, thin and cracked. Caught me. I didn't ask questions. I just sat. The thunder rolled. After a while he spoke, voice barely above the storm. "My brother used to lock me in the basement when we were kids. Said it was a game. Said if I made a sound he'd leave me there." He rubbed his scar. "I hate the dark." I reached out, slow enough that he could pull away. He didn't. My hand settled over his. His fingers were cold. "You're not there anymore." He leaned just a fraction, forehead to my shoulder. "I know. Doesn't feel like it." Stayed like that until the lights flickered back. When we stood, he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Don't tell anyone." "I won't." After that, the air between us changed. Charged. He'd brush past me in the narrow aisles and pause, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the shape. I started bringing him tea chamomile, 2 sugars, leaving it on the counter without a word. He'd drink it. Once, he left a note in my coat pocket. Thanks for the light. Weeks passed. We orbited. Then one Thursday, the store was dead. Rain again, softer this time. Elias was shelving in the mythology section. I was supposed to be inventorying cookbooks. Instead, I watched him stretch to reach the top shelf, cardigan riding up, the faint line of his spine visible. My mouth went dry. He caught me looking. Turned. What? Nothing. Liar. I stepped closer. The space between us was maybe 6 inches. I like the way you handle the books. Like they're alive. His ears went pink. They are Elias. He swallowed. Yeah. I want to kiss you. The words hung there, ridiculous and true. His eyes widened. For a second I thought he'd bolt. Then he laughed, shaky. You're terrible at timing, probably. He closed the distance. Our lips met, clumsy, noses bumping. His hand found my wrist, thumb pressing my pulse. It wasn't fireworks. It was shelter. He pulled back first. I'm a mess, Nora. I know, I might ruin this. Then we'll ruin it together. He smiled, small and real. Okay, but fear is patient. The next morning, he was quiet. Avoided my eyes while we opened. By afternoon, he'd retreated to the office, door cracked just enough to see the glow of his laptop. I gave him space. That night he texted, "Asterisk, can we talk?" Asterisk. We met at the Riverwalk after close. The water was black glass, street lamps smearing gold across it. He sat on a bench, hands twisted in his lap. I freaked out, I noticed. My last relationship she left when I couldn't perform, said. I was too much work. Too broken. His voice cracked. I don't want to be your project. I sat beside him. You're not. You're Elias, who reads Neruda aloud when he thinks no one's listening. Who knows every constellation in the children's astronomy section? Who makes the best cup of tea I've ever had? I nudged his shoulder. I'm scared too. What if I push too hard? What if you decide I'm not worth the effort? He looked at me then, really looked. You think that? Sometimes. He took my hand. Then we're both idiots. He kissed again, slower. The river kept moving. Still, the pullback came in waves. Some nights he'd stay over, fall asleep with his head on my chest, then wake before dawn and slip out with a whispered apology. I'd find his side of the bed cold, a note on the pillow, asterisk needed air. I'm sorry, asterisk. I learned to wait. To text, I'm here without demanding answers. To leave the porch light on. One Saturday, he asked me to drive him to his sister's house in the suburbs. She doesn't know. About me. About us. His voice was small. I need to tell her. But I'm terrified. Yeah. I drove. The radio played Lohi's playlist, all cello and rain. He stared out the window, thumb worrying the scar. When we pulled up to the tidy brick house, he didn't move. You can stay in the car. I'm coming in. His sister, Mara, opened the door with a toddler on her hip. She was warm, curious. You must be Nora. Elias talks about you. Flushed. Mara. We sat in the living room. Toys everywhere. Mara made coffee. Elias held the mug like a shield. Finally, I'm gay. The toddler babbled. Mara blinked. Okay. I figured you've been weird about dating forever? She set the toddler down. Does Mom know? Not yet. She'll be dramatic. You know how she gets? Mara looked at me. You're good for him. I smiled, throat tight. On the drive back, Elias was quiet. Then, I thought she'd hate me. She loves you. He reached for my hand. Thank you. That night he stayed. Didn't leave before dawn. We woke tangled, sunlight striping the sheets. He traced the freckles on my shoulder. I used to think love was a debt, something I'd owe forever. And now it feels like breathing. We built rituals. Tuesday nights at the indie cinema, sharing popcorn and whispered commentary. Thursday poetry slams he'd read, voice steady while I sketched the crowd. Sunday mornings at the farmer's market, his arm around my waist, no hesitation. He started therapy. Came home with exercises. Name 3 things you did well today. I'd find sticky notes on the fridge. Asterisk made Nora laugh. Shelved the new Atwood. Didn't hide. Asterisk, I had my own ghosts. An ex who'd called me too intense, who'd left when I asked for more than surface. Elias listened when I cried about it. Didn't try to fix me. Just held me until the shaking stopped. Winter came. We spent Christmas with my aunt, the one who'd taught me to paint. She took one look at Elias and pulled him into the kitchen to taste test her mulled wine. Later, under the tree, he gave me a first edition of The Little Prince, dog-eared at the page about taming. I gave him a leather-bound journal, the cover embossed with a compass. For the nights, you need to find your way back. Spring brought the bookstore's anniversary party. Elias organized it fairy lights. Local authors. A cake shaped like an open book. At the end of the night, the last guest gone, he pulled me to the poetry section. Dance with me. There's no music. He hummed, off-key but earnest. We swayed between the shelves. His cheek against mine. I love you, Nora. I love you too. We moved in together that summer. A tiny apartment above the store, windows overlooking the river. He painted the kitchen yellow. I hung my canvases. We argued over whose turn it was to buy coffee filters. Made up on the fire escape with the city humming below. Some nights the fear still crept in. He'd wake gasping from nightmares about locked doors. I'd hold him until his breathing evened. Other times I'd spiral asterisk, what if I'm not enough? Asterisk, and he'd make me list 5 things I loved about myself, refusing to let go until I did. We weren't perfect. We forgot anniversaries. Burned dinner. Had a fight about whose family to spend Thanksgiving. With that ended with slammed doors and tearful apologies at 2 a.m., but we chose each other. Every day, a year after the storm, we went back to the Riverwalk. Same bench. He carried a thermos of chamomile. I had a blanket. The stars were sharp. He took my hand. Remember when I thought I'd never be brave enough for this? You were always brave. Just needed reminding. He smiled, the kind that reached his eyes. Marry me? I laughed, tears instant. Yes. We didn't rush the wedding. Planned it for the bookstore after our aisles cleared for chairs, fairy lights still up from the anniversary. Mara walked him down the aisle. My aunt officiated. We wrote our own vows. His asterisk. I promise to let you see me, even when I want to hide. Mine. I promise to hold the light when you can't find it. Asterisk after. We danced to the same off-key humming. The books watched. Now when the rain comes, we leave the windows open. Let it drum on the sill. He sketches constellations on napkins. I paint the way light falls across his collarbone. We still have fears, still wake some nights reaching for each other, but the dark doesn't win anymore. Love isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to stay anyway. To build something sturdy from the wreckage. To say asterisk, I see you. All of you. And I'm not leaving asterisk. This is our story. Not a fairy tale. Just 2 people who decided the risk was worth the ruin. Who learned that healing isn't linear. That trust is a muscle. That sometimes the bravest thing is letting. Someone hand you the pieces and trusting they won't drop them. If you're out there, trembling in your own dark know, someone will sit with you. Someone will wait. Someone will choose you, scars and all. You are not too much. You are not a debt. You are the story worth telling. Thank you for witnessing us. May you find your own light. May you let it be seen,